Hi everyone, my name is Aaron Gravesdale. I'm a solution engineer at PDFTrons, and today I'm going to be giving a webinar about document collaboration. So first I'm going to sort of talk about PDFTrons and a bit about its background, about the technologies that we offer, some of the different toolkits, and sort of how to get started with them at a basic level, how to go about downloading them. And then what I'll do is sort of go through some of our demos and samples and talk about how PDFTrons technology can address common collaboration issues that come up. So some of the problems with existing collaboration workflows that we hear about from some of the customers who come in and talk to us, looking for something better and more efficient. So we'll sort of talk about some of those common pain points that come up when building collaboration workflows, and how PDFTrons toolkits, both our native PDFTrons SDK as well as WebViewer SDK, our web-based JavaScript toolkit, we'll take a look at how each of those can address some of those pain points. And as I'm talking, there's actually built into this webinar here some mechanisms for posting questions or chat discussions or anything like that. So yeah, please feel free to post any questions or comments to that webinar UI element, and then I'm happy to jump in and answer those questions right away. And I hope everyone is doing well, even in light of the current coronavirus lockdowns and so on. As you can see, doing this webinar from home, and I'm sure everyone else is likely doing something similar, but hopefully everyone is keeping safe and doing well in these times. So hopefully you can see my screen here. So what I've done is I've gone to pdftron.com. Now just a bit about a bit of background about PDFTrons. So we started around the late 90s, really right about the time that the PDF specification was first published. And our initial offering is PDFTrons Pdf SDK, which we still offer. It's a native toolkit. Originally, it was developed for Windows, but then we ported it over to Linux, Mac OS, as well as mobile platforms like iOS, Android, and UWP. And what it really is a toolkit for the entire document lifecycle, whether that's document generation, like creating PDF documents from scratch, or maybe converting from another format, like an image or an Office document or a CAD file. We include technology for improving PDF documents, sort of helping them grow up a little bit, doing things like merging different files together, or stamping page numbers or headers and footers onto documents, maybe doing something like optimizing a file to make it faster to render, or flattening complicated page content into an image that's easier to render. Let's see, we also have technology around the everyday usage of documents as well. So for example, interactively bringing up a document and viewing it, scrolling through it, zooming in and out, maybe making annotations on top of the document to highlight different parts of the file, or select text and copy that out. Making comments or filling out forms or signing documents are all things that we support. And we also have technology for finalizing the document, kind of the end of the document lifecycle. So doing things like redacting, personally identifying information so that a document is clear of anything confidential and can be disseminated to a larger audience, or converting to an archiving format like PDF that's meant for sort of long-term preservation, or applying a digital signature so that you kind of have a finalized version of the document, and one that can be detected for modification after the fact. And PDFTrons supports all of these use cases, but we of course have been getting a lot of interest around our technologies with regards to collaboration, especially as I mentioned before, in light of everyone being locked down in effectively quarantine and working from home. What that means is that collaboration tools are more important than ever. It really points out the need for the ability to collaborate electronically on information, moving away from some of the more inefficient workflows, such as paper-based workflows. So we'll take a look at some of that, and what we'll be looking most at is PDFTrons web viewer technology. So earlier I was talking about PDFTron SDK, which is our native toolkit that we've been developing for the past couple of decades, and that we built ourselves from the ground up and built in, for example, our own PDF rendering, so that we can have complete control over how we convert a PDF document into an image. And we've also developed our own Office to PDF conversion as well. So that's another thing we have full control over when it comes to our technology stack and the tools that we're able to apply. And so what we did a couple of years ago was we took that homegrown technology and we compiled it over to JavaScript. Thanks to advances in compiler technology, that became much easier to do in the past couple of years. And so what we've done is made that native toolkit available entirely on the web. So in pure JavaScript, we can run entirely inside of the browser that same gamut of document processing functionality covering the entire document lifecycle. That doesn't require any sort of server-side component, and it doesn't require any kind of native technology installed on the client-side machine either. It's pure JavaScript that runs inside of the browser and can run entirely client-side, just standalone inside of the browser. But we have additional tools that can be run server-side as well to help speed the process up. That's our sort of native SDK that can be employed to pick up any slack from the browser. So let's take a look at our live demo. So what I'm going to do is go from PDFTron.com. I'm going to go here on the top to Documentation, and then Web, and then Launch Demo. And that will bring up our live demo of WebViewer, where I can try out some of the sample documents that we have preloaded here in the viewer, whether that's PDF or Office or CAD files. But also I can go here to Open File and load up my own documents too if I wish. So if I wanted to try out some customer documents maybe that had been forwarded to me from support or something like that, or if I wanted to see how large files do inside of WebViewer or complicated content, see how it renders, just by going here to pdftron.com/webviewer/demo, you can upload your documents and try them out right away. But back here at pdftron.com, there were some interesting other links here as well under documentation. So what I did was I went to Web and then launched Demo to get to our demo site. But what you can do also is go to Web and then Overview. And that brings you to our guides. And these are a great place to get started with WebViewer. We have detailed guides for how to get started from a new project or an existing project, and from a variety of frameworks as well. So here in our Getting Started, we have a drop-down of the different frameworks that we have pre-made samples for. Now, WebViewer itself is written in React-based JavaScript, but we have samples for a variety of other platforms as well. So even if you're using something like Angular or Vue, you can certainly integrate WebViewer inside of that. And many of our customers have done so. Here also we have a lot of other guides that kind of walk through different use cases and different functionalities that might be helpful for you. So this documentation here is a great place to kind of dig deeper into WebViewer's capabilities and some of the things that might be helpful just in general to integrate into your solution. Now, it looks like we have a question here. Someone was asking that they were saying they're interested in PDFTron for a Word document to display as a PDF from an AWS Lambda Node.js scenario. Is the product suitable for this, or does it need a server or a computer instance to work? So the question seems to be, if I'm understanding correctly, whether PDFTron's technology can be used to kind of headlessly convert Word documents into PDF within a server context, or potentially within a browser context as well. And PDFTron's technology is absolutely capable of doing that. If you were running on an AWS node, it might make the most sense to run our native library. So if I go back here to PDFTron technology and documentation, what I can do is go to, let's go to our Linux build here. And we have, just as we had with WebViewer, we have a variety of frameworks that we have examples for getting started with PDFTrons SDK. So how to get started with a C++ project or a Java project or a Ruby project. And as well, we do have Node.js bindings for PDFTrons SDK as well. So what would make sense would be to follow this guide here to get started with running PDFTrons SDK within a Node instance. And then from within that, that will include a variety of samples as well. And one of those is office conversion. So I can just bring up that sample here, actually. Once we, I see, I think we've got it. We rearranged these samples recently to organize them a bit more intuitively. But here in our conversion sample, we have code samples in a variety of languages, and one of those is JavaScript for Node.js. And so we have example code of how to perform a conversion server-side from within Node without having to bring up any sort of user interface and just running entirely server-side. Now we can do the same kinds of conversions within the browser as well. We have built-in capabilities for viewing Office documents just inside of the viewer. So here, we can immediately load up things like docx or XLS files into the viewer. But you can also run that same technology headlessly. So if you wanted to, inside of a web instance, just convert an Office document into PDF, then we have similar samples here using our full APIs here inside of WebViewer itself. So essentially, what we can do is just kind of run this conversion without necessarily having to display a UI for the user. So without the user actually seeing the document that we're converting, we can just kind of headlessly convert that Office document into PDF. Someone else is asking whether PDFTrons has the ability to convert a PDF page into an HTML page. And if yes, is there any REST support or SDK which can be used to achieve that? So I think the first question to ask when you're trying to convert a PDF document into HTML, a great question is, do you actually want to do that? So there can be a few different reasons for converting PDF into HTML. One of them might be that you're trying to analyze the document. Like you might want to programmatically go through and process the HTML file. Maybe you have some existing code that already does that. Now, if you're writing that kind of functionality from scratch, it would probably be easier to use PDFTrons element reader APIs to go through and read the PDF document at a low level if you're just trying to process the file. But sometimes what people are trying to do is to display the PDF within a web browser. And if that's the case, then in general, it would make sense to instead use WebViewer. So what WebViewer can do is bring up a PDF document and interactively show it for users. And the experience is much better than converting to an HTML document. It's much closer to a desktop PDF viewing experience. So in general, and we'll see more of this throughout the demo, if you're just looking to display a PDF document on the web, we would generally recommend using WebViewer instead. But that said, we do have APIs for converting PDF into HTML. We have one method that preserves the PDF's layout so that it's very accurate in terms of the HTML or SVG, if you prefer, that we output. And also we have in our document understanding products, tools like PDF Genie, which is in the process of being deprecated, as well as PDFTrons.ai, our next generation document understanding technology that we're hoping to have a release for later this year. In each of those cases, we're also converting PDF to HTML, but it's intended more for the document analysis kind of workflows that people might want to do. So it outputs XHTML that can be processed programmatically. So really, in terms of PDF to HTML conversion, I think it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. But absolutely, PDFTrons does have the ability to convert PDF into HTML, and that can be done inside of the browser or server side as well. Someone else was asking, does your text extraction or element inspector provide segmentation down to the word and character level? And we do indeed provide fine-grained text extraction. So just a bit of background about that. PDFs are a bit different than other file formats like text or HTML or docx. What's different about PDF is that the way the content is stored inside of the file doesn't exactly correspond with what you see on screen. Deep down at a low level, each of these text elements is being placed just at an absolute location within these page coordinates here. And what that means is that all of this information can be specified actually in any order. The way that it's laid out here on the page isn't related to how it's displayed on screen. So what we've done is we've developed our own text extraction technology that can reconstruct the order that text appears on page, and then it enables you to gather that information from the underlying document in that same order. So that when you basically convert that PDF into text, that you then have a readable set of text out of that. And our text extraction technology does let you extract at the word level, so you can get coordinates for each word displayed on the page. Another question was, can you convert Google Docs and Google Sheets through WebViewer? So we don't have built-in technology to support the Google Doc formats, but if you have if you're running our native toolkit on a Windows machine and you have some program installed that's able to print a given file type, so say you have some desktop application that's maybe able to print a Google Doc file or a Google Sheets file. If you have that set up within the Windows environment, set it up to be the default printer for that file type, then our native toolkit can leverage the Windows printing subsystem to convert files of that type into PDF. So if you happen to have some program installed that's able to print doc files from Google, then it should be possible to set up our toolkit to leverage the Windows printing subsystem to convert those into PDF. But within WebViewer itself, we don't have that technology available. Someone is asking, how can I embed photographs or a link to a photograph into a file or document? We have a variety of ways of doing so. And so we have some APIs for stamping images onto files. And we also have ways to just stamp raw images themselves. So here in this sample, I'm just going to bring up the custom, no, that's right, the add a stamp sample here. And this is effectively showing how to add a new image onto a PDF document. We have built-in support for that, so I can just drag and drop this image here onto the document, resize it however I wish, and change things like the opacity if I'd like to. Now, built into this is the ability to add a link. So if I want to have the ability to click on this image and jump someplace else, that's something that I can immediately add in from our UI. So absolutely all of that is possible. You can embed photographs into a file or document, and you can embed links to arbitrary content, with WebViewer. And also, so these have been added as annotations, so they're still modifiable by users. But if you wanted to, you could burn this image, flattening it into the PDF page. And someone was asking whether we support right to left and left to right alphabets. So of course we do support left to right as shown here, and as well we do have support for right to left files as well. Here we have an example document displaying text in right to left languages. Let's see, we had another question. Do you currently do anything with videos or with documents that can have live data on them, like stock prices? So we have a couple of different ways of dealing with video content. Usually inside of a PDF document, videos are stored as something called rich media annotations. And what you can do is use our toolkit to extract rich media annotation content and then display it inside of a viewer, whatever works best for you, whether that's sort of a custom viewing element that you display over the page, or whether that's maybe a link to a video hosting site, something like YouTube, for example, that could host that video. And then you could add a link into that external site. And so either of those scenarios is fully supported. With regard to showing the video over the document, to do that, you might need to customize the viewer a bit. But luckily, WebViewer has been designed to be as flexible and as customizable as possible. We have a lot of APIs for changing the way it looks and behaves, some high-level ones, but also we've posted the full UI source code to GitHub. So that means that there's anything about the way the viewer behaves, or if there are new elements you'd like to add on top, or you'd like to rearrange things, or anything you'd like to change about WebViewer's UI, that's all entirely under your control because you have full access to the source code. So using that, it would be entirely possible to bring up videos on top of the viewer, wherever on top of the page that you like. Yeah, we can definitely support that kind of functionality. And someone else was asking, is it possible to view DWG files? And indeed it is. We have support for converting CAD files server-side in order to show them inside of WebViewer. So what you can do is you can take DWG, DGN, DXF, DWF, and RVT files, and using our server-side components, convert those into PDF, and then once they're in PDF form, show them within WebViewer. Let's see. Someone else was just jumping in, asking about Google Documents again, and again, the way to address file types that WebViewer doesn't already have support for would be to leverage our server-side toolkit on Windows, which, if you have a program set up that's able to print a given file type, then our Windows-based toolkit can leverage the Windows printing subsystem to convert files of that type into PDF. And then someone else is asking, again, about the photograph question. When I tried before to upload a photograph, it appears as a very large image that I have to resize. Is there a shortcut that I'm missing? So it's not that you're missing it so much as just the default functionality is set up to be flexible. Sort of the assumption is that end users are stamping images onto documents and would want to be able to resize them. But what you can do is absolutely restrict some of that functionality. If you know exactly where on the page you'd like to stamp the image, so say if you always know you're going to stamp it right in the upper left corner of the page at a specific size, then it might make sense to leverage our Stamper API. And what that lets you do, that's a very sort of flexible, high-level API to stamp images, text, or even other PDF pages onto a given location on the PDF document. So what this is doing is just hard coding, essentially, the location that it will apply a stamp onto the document. And so that's a very useful way to really have a lot of control over exactly what happens when that image is stamped onto the document. So the short answer is that absolutely we can support that kind of scenario, and we can restrict the size or position of the image being stamped. It just might take some customization of WebViewer to make that happen. And if you run into issues with that, please do feel free to reach out to our support. Someone was also asking whether we support Office 365 documents and what facilities we have around that. So for that, will they remain updated in the final PDF if the source is updated? I see. No, so if you convert an Office document into PDF, then what WebViewer is displaying is the PDF copy, not necessarily the original Office copy. And then someone else is asking whether it's possible to focus also on the collaboration as well as sort of the Q&A stuff. So yeah, maybe I should jump sort of more into that just to make sure that we get that covered within this webinar. So here, here in our web viewer demo, what we're showing here is the ability to kind of load up documents electronically into our viewer here. And that immediately kind of gives us a better experience than what the default collaboration workflow for a lot of users is, which is a collaboration workflow based on paper. So for lots and lots of users, even still, if there's a document that multiple people in their workplace need to both read, and modify and collaborate on, maybe some sort of document that multiple people need to review and approve before it can be finalized, or say blueprints that need to be passed around a construction site between workers and architects and so on. In a lot of cases, what's going on is that people are just printing out those documents as paper and then physically passing them to other people. So there are a lot of downsides to that approach, of course. One of the biggest being that we're all working from home now, and we really need electronic-based workflows rather than ones that require people to be physically proximal to each other. So that's definitely a kind of central issue with document collaboration, and one, of course, that WebViewer addresses directly by showing documents inside of the viewer, whether that's a web-based viewer or something you put inside of a native application. So WebViewer has built-in support for PDF documents, images, and Office files as well. With the leverage of server-side technologies as well, we can support additional file types like the CAD types that I was talking about, or additional file types, or really any file type at all if you have the right setup on the server. So once we have it in electronic form, now there are a lot of things that are much, much easier for end users to work with. So one of those, of course, is viewing. So unlike a piece of paper, I can zoom very far into a PDF document and still retain detail, especially if I'm actually viewing the PDF copy here inside of the browser. So for example, in this case, I'm going to load up a CAD PDF. And this is a blueprint here of a building. And because it's the original PDF copy and not just a piece of paper, I'm able to zoom way in and see very fine-grained details on top of that document. So that makes my life a lot easier. I can not have to go back and reprint this complex document physically. I can just zoom right in and see the content right away. That also helps with things like being able to take advantage of advanced PDF features, like the ability to toggle different layers on and off. So if I were using this document and I wanted to remove content that maybe was a bit confusing for me, I can go ahead and do that. And so I can just see, the parts of the file that are actually useful for my workflow. Another very important thing is the ability for users who are disabled, for example, who might be vision impaired, to be able to take advantage of the content, even though it starts off as digital visual content. So in this case, what we're doing is taking advantage of that text extraction capability that I mentioned earlier, the ability of PDFTrons technology to take the text from inside of a PDF document and return it in human readable order. Not the order it is on the PDF at a low level, but the order that people actually read content in. And here what we're doing is extracting the text from a regulation around support for users with disabilities. And we've put it inside of this HTML control just to show the extracted version of the text. Now, in addition to this, we can get things like the location of text or the font information, but we're just trying to show it here in the form that it could be fed into a screen reader to make this document accessible to someone who might not have the same abilities with regards to vision as other users. And additionally, because we have the PDF document here, we can do things like extract the low-level tags inside of a document. We don't have a showcase set up for this, but it's certainly one of the capabilities of our toolkit to be able to go through and read marked content identifiers from the document So that, for example, if we have an image shown here and there might be alternative text that can describe what that image portrays, that's something that could then be presented back to users. So all of that functionality is something that's really not possible if you're just working with paper, and so immediately it's a better experience for users that run into those pain points of, how do I actually view the document? How can I search through it in a timely way? How can I grab the text from it and have it read to me? How can I get alternative text for purely visual content, like an image of a tree or something like that? So for all of those pain points, switching from paper over to an electronic-based workflow really solves those issues for users. Now, another issue that comes up when it comes to collaboration is how you're viewing documents electronically. So as users switch over from a paper-based workflow into an electronic one, sometimes that happens a bit bottom-up rather than top-down. So sometimes, rather than management saying, we're adopting a new collaboration system and everyone's going to use it, what happens is the end users themselves download apps and start to leverage SaaS services to make collaboration easier. So, they might download an electronic copy of the PDF and then open that up with an end user application like Reader or Zoto. And in order to share the files, they might fall back onto something like email or a file sharing service like Dropbox or Box. And those collections of technologies start to solve the problem a lot better than paper does, because you're solving those problems that we just talked about. So those pain points of now you're able to actually view the document electronically and search through it in a timely way and so on. But it brings up some other issues and some other pain points. And one of those is downloading. So if I need to download a copy of this document in order to view it, one locally, something stored in my file system, now what I've done is created another version of the document. So now there's, in the change history of this document, I've created another branch and potentially more branches as I share that file around. So different users are now working on different copies of this document, and it's really impossible to figure out which one should be the canonical source of truth about anything with this file. And if I'm working with a blueprint, that can actually be very risky. Different versions of the same blueprint floating around a construction site is a great way to make things built not according to spec, because different people are working off different pages, and a certain thing should be built at a certain location according to one document, but not to another. And the end result of that can be things like lawsuits, as it's now incumbent upon someone to correct the misconstructed part of the job site. So there's a lot of risk associated with different users being on different copies of the same document, and it's something that makes a lot of sense to clamp down on. But besides even just that management issue, just downloading a file can be quite onerous and really lead to a lot of slowdown. If we're talking about very large documents that users need to collaborate on, something in the order of hundreds of megabytes or even gigabytes, then that can be quite a long download. And if that has to happen for every single document that every user needs to make use of, then that can be that can really add up to a considerable slowdown in their day and really bog down that collaboration. Another very useful thing is to be able to keep users within one's application. So suppose that I've developed a document management system that users are using, but they have to download any documents from that system in order to edit them. So maybe I can go through and I can browse all of my documents similar to this files gallery here. Maybe this is my document management system and I can download any of these locally. But that now takes me out of my existing application because I would sort of leave this web view of this DMS and have to go and open up some external application. So now I basically left that existing UI, and I'm off changing content in some third-party application, whatever that happens to be, whatever I manage to maybe get installed on my computer. But if the viewer is integrated inside of whatever larger system I have, whether that's an issue tracking system or a document management system or whatever it might be. If I have the viewer integrated, then every user is following the same workflow. The tools they're using are consistent. Any annotations they make are all going to be consistent across different users. And it's all part of one unified user interface. And so that's quite valuable in its own right and really speeds up workflows for users as a result. Let's see. Another pain point that can come up in collaboration is being locked into proprietary formats. So here what we're using is the PDF format. So we convert all of our documents essentially from Office or images or CAD files. Essentially all of those are normalized into the PDF format. And PDF is a great format for doing that kind of thing. For quite a few different reasons. It's an open format, so the PDF specification is available to anyone, and there are a variety of PDF implementations around. There aren't just a couple of implementations that you might be locked into. Additionally, PDF is a great format for taking other content and compiling it into. We sometimes say at PDFTron that PDF is the assembly language of document forms. It's something that lots of other higher level formats can compile into, but it itself is very semantically low level. So that makes it kind of a great candidate for normalizing all of your document formats into, and one that's much better than something like images, which aren't searchable, or text, which loses a lot of content, or even other file formats for open information exchange, like HTML or SVG, given the inconsistencies between different implementations of those formats. So the advantage of PDF is that it's displayed exactly the same everywhere, and that it's an open format and one that other formats can be converted into quite easily. Another thing that's important in terms of open formats is the use of annotations and how annotations are stored. So if I make an annotation here in this document, so I'm just adding a highlight in here, there are a lot of different ways that I could save that highlight. So one of the ways is if I were to click download here and just download this, this document. Here we are. Let me just download this to my desktop. And what I can do is reopen this. And as we can see, that annotation is burned into the file itself once it actually shows up here in the viewer inside of Chrome. There we are. So this highlight is here added into the document itself. So that's one way of storing annotations. But usually that approach is a bad idea. And the reason why is that if I'm just making a new copy of the PDF I'm editing, every time I change an annotation or add a new one or delete one, if I have to make an entire new copy of the document every time that happens, then I'm going to start blowing up my file storage requirements very quickly, because now every time anything happens, I've got another copy of the document to save somewhere. So we generally don't recommend taking that technique. You can avoid this saving of the annotations into the PDF outside of downloading the file or otherwise exporting it. And what we have set up with WebViewer is the ability to save annotations as well as form field information into a format called XFDF. It's an XML-based format that's actually used throughout the PDF industry. For example, Adobe Acrobat supports XFDF. And it's also, if it's not already an ISO standard, it's certainly on its way to becoming one. So that's the format that we've chosen to standardize on at PDFTron, but we have capabilities for other formats as well. So if you have an existing, maybe a JSON-based annotation format, you could convert that into XFDF, or you could read that information through custom handlers and just add the annotation information onto the PDF document itself. So it's not the end of the world if you happen to have standardized upon some sort of proprietary format for information interchange. But just starting off with an open format from the beginning is in general a choice that lets you move to whatever technology suits your needs best. Regarding whether the annotations can be versioned or whether you can have different versions of a comment, that's possible as well. So because we're saving our annotations in this XFDF format, that can be versioned, and you can keep a history of it within your system. And actually that transitions nicely into kind of a demo of some of our collaboration that I was hoping to get to. So I'm just going to briefly stop sharing my screen here, 1 second. And what I'm going to do is bring up another desktop here. And I'm going to share my entire screen here. I believe the Zoom sharing or the Livestorm sharing window here is visible, so there might be a bit of recursion. And, so don't stare too long at the screen share. But what I've done here is I've gone to a sample that we have for collaboration. And that's here on GitHub. It's our collaboration sample that's built around WebSockets, SQLite, and Node.js. And what this sample is doing is, it's actually quite easy to set up. It's just a few lines of code. But it's setting up a Node.js-based server that saves and restores annotation information within a SQLite database. And it's very easy to set up. It's just a few lines of code here to install it, and then npm start to get it running. And then once that's set up, it'll bring up a browser window with a document in it. And you can create as many collaborators on the same document as you wish. So this is a nice way to kind of get a sense of what collaboration within WebViewer can kind of look like. So here, what I'll do inside of, when I just bring up another viewer here. So I'm just going to log into this URL. And what it's doing is bringing up that same document that we saw before, and it will bring me up inside of a new user context. So I'm going to add, let's say I wanted to underline PDFTron here. What it'll do then is create a new annotation here. It's giving me the username Jennifer. And as we can see in this other window, with a different user context, that we can see that same annotation. Notice how it showed up immediately. In all of our windows, actually, we were able to see that change instantaneously. And when other users come in, we can also highlight, and under that user context, see this annotation being created. So again, what's going on here is that WebViewer fires an event when an annotation is made, and then this sample includes custom code whenever that annotation is made to save off the XML version of that annotation and send it to the server that I have running here inside of this window. So in this window here, I just run these commands here. Clone, npm start, and npm install. And that set up that server here listening and exchanging the XML information to each of these browsers. So this node server has a connection, a WebSocket connection to each of these browsers. And then once an annotation is made in one window, it can receive that XML and then broadcast it back to all other windows. And what it's doing is it's keeping that inside of a SQLite table. So you can actually see this code from inside of the GitHub sample. If I go to server and then these two files in here, what I can see is that it's creating a new table, and then when it's saving those, it's saving that back into that annotations table. So when it's doing this, when it's saving off the latest copy of the XML, what you could do is, instead of just replacing what's already there, you could keep a history of each of the annotation states within that. So that would give you the ability to roll back within sort of the history of the annotations made in a document. And so you could revert any changes and make it possible for people to jump back in history or undo some changes. Also, this kind of points to a bit of the flexibility here with regards to to how collaboration is presented to users. So here, just anyone connecting to this URL gets a single document, and everyone is collaborating on the same document, and everyone can see everyone else's annotations. But there's a lot more customization that could be done on that kind of setup. So for example, you could customize this collaboration so that maybe, let's say you were a teacher teaching a classroom full of students, and you wanted to divide up students into certain groups so where they could all see each other's annotations, but not any of the other group's annotations, and where you, the teacher, could see what they were doing. And maybe you could make comments directed at individual students without any of the other students even seeing that. And that's all entirely possible with WebViewer. We just have kind of a default setup here. But what gets sent to whatever browser is entirely customizable. So you can have different annotations show up for different users and enforce privacy rules so that annotations made from one user aren't visible to others unless you explicitly make them that way. So I'm going to stop screen sharing again momentarily, just so I can see some of these questions that have come up. So one question was around the security controls to prevent users from impersonating others or adding or editing annotation content. And that is something that's customizable, but not built into WebViewer itself. So we've attempted to make WebViewer as flexible as possible and as customizable as possible, but it really is scoped down to just the viewing and processing of documents. So when it comes to user information, such as user names or the permissions that are available, those sorts of things are entirely under your control. So let me reshare this this window here. So in terms of user permissions, that's something that's under your control. From WebViewer's point of view, it's just who the annotation user is. That's just passed in as a string. And that's what controls what user we make annotations under. So for example, I can set myself up as the Sally user here. And then if I make an annotation on this document, we see that it shows up as this Sally user. And there are security permissions that can be included as part of that. So for example, if we want to enable someone to be a read-only user, that's possible. And in that case, they won't have the ability to make any annotations, although they can see existing annotations. Or if we wanted somebody to be an administrator, that's possible too. So in that case, they can go in and edit the annotations of other users or even delete them. Whereas, an ordinary user can only modify their own annotations and not those of other users, similar to the read-only user. So that's entirely under your control, WebViewer by design doesn't manage anything to do with users or permissions, but we want to give you the ability to customize that however you wish. There was a question of whether does PDFTrons support traditional relational databases based on things like Oracle, MySQL, and so on. And again, WebViewer itself isn't actually talking to any databases. The sample that I was showing before was based on a SQLite sample, and we just chose SQLite because it's a freely available database that we can easily deploy from Node and use to save XFDF information. But whatever database system you wish, you can use to save that information in. It's just a matter of creating a connection to that database and saving the information within it. And another person was asking, how does the server resolve conflicts to edit to the same annotations for multiple locations? And so this one, the implementation that we saw earlier, that sample that's available on GitHub, what it does is simply overwrites the latest with whatever information it's given. So it's a first come, first serve kind of model. But it doesn't have to be that way. We just sort of posted that as kind of a starting point, but you can customize that however you wish. So if you would like to add in conflict resolution so that a user can see what changes have been made and then choose which one should quote unquote win, then that's possible as well. It would just require a modification of that sample. Someone else was asking, third-party products, do those get updated regularly? And with our products, yes, whenever we leverage third-party tools, such as our OCR or our CAD conversion, we do keep those upgraded so that you're able to access the latest technology. And someone else was asking whether it's possible to import users from Active Directory. And again, just to emphasize, WebViewer itself does not keep track of users, or so there's no importing or exporting of users or anything like that. With WebViewer, when you're setting up someone as a user in the document, that's just set up as a string. Okay, so so another issue, let's see, that can come up is security. So when collaborating, because different users are accessing the same document, collaborating in a secure way is pretty important. That's a big problem if you're just giving users the ability to download the document directly and share it through email or through file sharing services. If you take that route, then now that content is accessible basically to whomever the users choose to forward it to. So that can be something that can hit up against regulations or design requirements if this is confidential information, or something that should not be shared because of GDPR regulations or other kinds of regulations. Then keeping the document secured is something that's really a core requirement of any kind of collaboration. So that's something that within WebViewer we have support for as well. So we have built-in support for PDF encryption, the standard PDF encryption methodologies. So AES, for example, and so you can add a password onto a document and then have the user input that password so that if the user doesn't actually know the password, they wouldn't be able to open it within WebViewer. And additionally, you can kind of customize that a bit. So for example, what some of our customers will do is add encryption to a PDF document server side, and then will securely pass the password down to the browser without the user even knowing it. You can configure WebViewer to make a REST API call back to your servers to grab a generated password that way, and then you can programmatically apply it to the document without the user even knowing. So that way, if they do manage to get a hold of a PDF copy, a copy of the PDF itself, then the password necessary to open it isn't something that they've been given. And additionally, there are lots of other things you can do to kind of lock down the UI a bit. One of those things is inside of our UI, you can remove these download and print buttons. We actually have that in this sample here. So here I can remove download and print. And the source code for doing that is quite short. It's just a couple of lines of code. Another useful thing is to be able to add watermarks over the content as well. So for example, I can just put my first name into here, and here it's got a timestamp, but this could be additional information as well, such as an IP address or location information if you're able to find that out. And what having a watermark over the content lets me do is track whoever might have leaked this content. So even if somebody snaps a picture of the screen with a mobile device or takes a screenshot of this document, if I'm overlaying user information on top of it, then I can figure out who may have leaked that information initially. So that closes off another sort of important part of the document collaboration scenarios that I need to present to my users. So another important thing with the ability to collaborate is the functionality that I'm able to present to users. So that's something where WebViewer has a real advantage over other systems. So a lot of other document viewing solutions, especially with regards to PDF, might not have the same wide array of functionality that can be done in browser that WebViewer does. So again, what we did with WebViewer was we took our native toolkit and compiled it over to JavaScript so that we had all of this same functionality available. What that means is that if they need to do something more advanced than just the basic PDF features that we've shown here, that's supportable within WebViewer still. So one of those would be redaction. So rather than having to download the document and bring it into a third-party tool to redact information from it, I can do so directly inside of the browser here. In fact, what I can do is upload a document into here and redact it entirely client-side in JavaScript code without having to transfer that document over the network up to a server. And what that means is that I'm not sending an unredacted copy over the network where that might expose me to liability for sharing personal information. The same is true for other sort of more advanced PDF features. So for example, when it comes to form filling and form building, we're able to support that directly inside of the browser. Here in our form filling, this is quite customizable. So if I start filling this out, for example, I can automatically extract any information that's been typed into the document. But also, I could pre-populate this form as well. So maybe as the user is typing the first name, I could take the extracted form field information, run a query on my database, and look for anyone with the first name Aaron, and then maybe I can pre-populate the last name, address, and so on. And that makes things faster for the end user, but also could greatly cut down on errors typing into this form. And that can have knock-on effects as well, because errors in a document like this could lead to very expensive liability or audits and so on. So keeping forms error-free is a pretty important thing. And additionally, I have the ability to build forms inside of WebViewer. So if I had, say, just a scanned image or a document that I made up in Word that didn't actually have a signature field, what I could do is add new fields onto it. So I can do things like just drag and drop. Let me bring up a different document here so it's a little easier to see. So I can add a text field directly onto the document and then burn that into the file. So what that means is that I don't really ever have to leave the WebViewer interface to continue with my PDF processing. And by staying within this interface here, that makes the collaboration smoother all around because I'm not context switching or downloading or anything like that. So I think we're sort of coming up to the end of the webinar. I just wanted to kind of address a couple of other questions that have been posted. Are VB.NET developers in any way restricted from using the SDK functionalities? And no, someone running VB.NET should be able to access all of PDFTrons capabilities. So whether that's on the client-side machine through maybe like an app that users run, or whether that's server-side, maybe some headless functionality of processing PDF documents. We have .NET bindings for that, so you can access the full functionality from VB.NET. Someone was also asking what stops a malicious user from utilizing the web SDK from a JavaScript console to alter content, such as the watermark you just showed. And it's true that a malicious user could go in and modify that JavaScript and potentially remove that watermark. And if that's a concern for you, we can actually add the watermark server side instead, so that it's baked into the document, or we can do it as the document is loading up inside of WebViewer. So what we can do is kind of pre-process the file before it's actually displayed, and we can burn a watermark into it at that point. And we have a sample showing exactly how to do that kind of functionality here in our WebViewer samples. So if I go to Web, Samples, and Full APIs, then I have some sample code for how to pre-process the document before it's shown in the viewer. So essentially what it's doing is flattening the annotations, I believe, or what is this doing? No, this is actually, this is actually stamping information onto the document. So very similar to the watermark scenario that we're talking about. And then after it's stamped that on and flattened those annotations, then it shows it inside of the viewer. So that can be another approach for doing much the same thing. And then there was a one remaining question from previously. Someone was saying that when they upload the photograph, it appears as a very large image they have to resize. And yeah, again, that would be something that could be customized. And the example, okay, someone also was asking of a CAD or PDF where you zoomed in, would you be able to add a picture or a photograph to a series of points or a particular point, and that as well as possible with our Stamper API. So I think that covers off all of the questions. And I think that we're at the top of the hour now. So thanks again, everyone, for showing up to this webinar. I really appreciate your time on here. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out through our support forums or through the forums here under PDFTron at the top here. Go to support and resources. And then if you're just first trialing out the software, then I would recommend using this free trial support form, and you can get in touch with us that way. So thanks again for attending. Oh, there was one last question: what third-party OCR is used at the backend, and that is Tesseract. So yes. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for your time, and looking forward to speaking with you further. Cheers.